build something unique for the person that you really want to impress, and make sure that they know that you did this just for them.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
Hey, and this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com. Today, interview.
Hey, Jack, just before we start, I've been doing some thinking lately. You know, our podcast won't be legit until we have a sponsor, right?
Okay, but haven't we been turning down sponsors?
I know, but it's hard to recommend something you and I don't use often, and we're already promoting the crap out of our services.
Fair point, but what about the course we just released? Wouldn't you recommend that to our listeners?
Yeah, for sure I would. All right, so how would we start?
Well, for starters, I wouldn't mention that it took us over a year and 3 trips to Japan and Switzerland to record the thing.
All right, let's not do that. But at minimum, I would want to mention where they can find the course. Like, let's put it to, I don't know, course.quickmail.io. Would that work for you?
It works, and then I could share what a few of those early students had to say about it. Like the one from Damien, who said it was by far the best course on cold outbound I've ever taken. Or what did Chris say? The week on sales research and targeting prospects blew my mind. Yeah, we definitely want that in there.
Yeah, I like it. It's kind of too easy. You know, people always say nice things when they get results. And at some point, we're going to have to come up with some hard sales copywriting materials of our own. And you know, I'm not that great at that. So I don't know, what would you put on the page?
Okay, how about this? Imagine that instead of getting ignored by prospects day after day, you could just follow a course that shows you how to book meetings with dream clients and automate the entire outbound process so you can focus on closing deals and scaling your company. Plus, there's that money back guarantee and the 8 modules and the bonus podcast interviews. But so far, so good?
Yeah, I like it, man. But you know, I like your style. So anyway, all right, it's getting a bit late. So can we podcast now and review that later?
Yeah, but at least promise me that course.quickmail.io is finally live and people can finally try out the course right now.
Yeah, sure. I already put it live, and just so you know, I added that special price we discussed about for our podcast listener, and then we can leave it here until, you know, we're happy with the landing page. Sounds fair enough?
Yeah, let's do it. Guys, we've got a special guest interview today. We're welcoming Benji. He's the co-founder of Grow and Convert, a really, really good content marketing agency that focuses on driving conversions through content, not just monthly visits or a certain amount of blog posts per month. And I personally sought out Benji because I was impressed with his agency. And now I'm very excited to welcome you to the show. Benji, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, welcome, man. Hey, Jack, in fact, before the show started, you actually told me that one of your clients, he worked with 2 agencies that were like really great. And then that was your one, obviously. And then his one, right?
Yeah. So you might not know this, Benji, but you and I have a mutual client. And this particular client worked with a lot of consultants and agencies over the past years. And in a conversation with me, he said that I should reach out to you because you, Benji, and myself were his best consultants that he worked with before. So I figured that's
good. I'm glad we have that in common.
Yeah, it's a good review. So with that, Benji, can you tell us a bit about your background in Grow and Convert?
Yeah, so prior to starting this company, I was up in San Francisco, ran marketing for 2 different startups up there. The idea for the agency really came from my own personal experience running marketing at the first company. And the reason was I was trying to get a content marketing operation off the ground at the first company. And just having a ton of responsibilities on my plate, the first instinct was to go hire an agency to help me do this. When I started exploring the category, I realized that a lot of the agencies out there position themselves as these content marketing agencies, but when you really dug into what they did, they were just kind of glorified writing services. They just kind of focused on producing X number of articles a month. And as someone who was held accountable to leads and the metrics inside of the company, it just didn't really do what I wanted these agencies to do. And so fast forward 2 to 3 years after that experience, we had grown our own site that was just teaching content marketing, basically from the experiences I learned doing it myself in that company and the company afterwards. When it came to forming the agency, that was how we wanted to approach things differently, was to really focus on measuring results so we could see blog post by blog post which articles were converting, and then report on conversions instead of just saying some subset of the traffic that we're generating converts and you should be happy with that. So
okay, thanks for that. And that's growandconvert.com. I'm curious because we're gathered here to have a conversation about marrying, let's say, outreach and content. I mean, there's a phenomena that I think a lot of marketers become familiar with, where they produce content and then publish it and then nothing happens, right? So I think there's a critical step
Crickets.
here, right, where you need to bring that content somewhere. And that's where I'd like to kick off this conversation is, I mean, maybe you can demystify what happens after you click publish that a lot of content marketers get wrong, and maybe where outreach comes in to help things out.
yeah, this was a problem that we wanted to solve for. So again, I think the way that most content marketers do things is kind of exactly what you say. They publish and just kind of play the Google waiting game. And then you can take somewhere between 6 months, a year, 2 years to start seeing the articles rank for the various keywords that you're targeting. And so when we started the agency, we just wanted to rethink that process and ask ourselves, if we wanted to drive results faster, how would we do that? And so now we think of things in 2 different buckets. There's short-term promotion. In the beginnings of the website, what we used to do is something called community content promotion. And so this kind of has an outreach component as well, where basically you join a community on Facebook, on LinkedIn, you go and join certain subreddits, and then you interact with the audiences there, and you kind of just observe the conversations that take place. And then over time, as you build some clout in some of these communities, you can start sharing your own content in there because you know some of the pain points and challenges of the people in the group, and use that as a way to drive traffic back to your website. So our whole beginning of our website was started just doing that. And we were able to grow it to about 24,000 visitors a month in about 4.5 months, just doing that. And then
that's 24,000 visitors a month in 4 months, just by joining different communities and interacting there.
And sharing content. Yeah.
How much time did you actually spend in those communities? And
a lot.
Yeah.
So that's a key thing. I know we're going to talk about outreach too, but I think one of the main challenges, especially when we started talking about this publicly, that we were doing this, is that people think that they can just go into a community and just
spam links and off you go. Oh, if only.
Exactly. And share things right away without putting in the time and effort and really trying to understand the people inside of the communities. And so when you ask about time, it's a good amount of time. I would spend a good portion of my day just observing conversations that took place, trying to figure out what people cared about in these communities. That when I did write something, it was going to be something of substance that related to the communities, and build relationships inside of there too before you go post something. So oftentimes I would join these groups and spend 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even a month, of just interacting with people, answering questions before I shared anything. And I think that was the key to a lot of the success there.
But I'm confused because I'm sorry, cutting you off here, but
yeah, no worries.
You're joining a group that was to promote Grow and Convert in its early stages. So I'm imagining these groups probably had something to do with marketing, maybe with content, and that's your world.
Yeah.
So why did it take time to read through existing posts to really speak their language if that's where you're coming from? I'm thinking about the listener who's like, hey guys, I've been in this industry for 10 years. I know the conversation. Can't I just jump in and start posting?
Yeah, because people are at different places and want different things from the group. So for example, like one of the groups that we joined in the early days was a group on SaaS growth hack. And so
I know the group.
Yeah, doing content marketing for SaaS is different than a service business. And we're only speaking to one channel. And so there's a lot of other conversations that are taking place in there. They're talking about retention opportunities on top of just acquisition stuff. And so we really had to look for conversations that were asking about content marketing to either come in and respond with a comment pointing them to a resource that would be helpful, or generate discussion around using content marketing specifically for acquisition purposes. And so, yes, I did have a lot of prior knowledge and it was a lot of my personal experience, but what works well is trying to relate the post to a question that someone had already asked or topics that have come up multiple times so that it's not perceived as something that's spammy.
Jeremy, are any bells coming off when you use Quora?
What do you mean exactly?
I feel like you've posted in Quora. I feel like you've probably taken a similar approach here. Maybe I'm dead wrong, but...
Oh, I see what you mean. Like, filtering what are the top questions kind of thing to spend my time just on those ones or the one that,
right,
attract a lot of views. Yeah, for sure. And, I resonate a lot with what you were saying, Benji. I mean, the time where you could just join a group and spam your article, it's just like, it's way over. It's gone. And anyone who join a group and see those things happening, just leave those groups. So it's not a good strategy, definitely. Did you, Jack, actually had any attempt in doing those sort of things to promote your own service?
Yeah, I did. I can tell it wasn't necessarily a failure because things came out of it, but I went about it completely the wrong way. So QuickMail happens to have a Facebook group, right? And I hate Facebook. I don't do it. But when I wanted to start this like personalization service thing, I jumped on there. I was like, hey.
Oh, that's true.
What the hell did I say? I basically just pitched it. I was just like, hey, this sounds like a pain point. We're doing this. Message me or go to my contact thing just to say, let's talk about it. And it came off, I think, aggressive. Maybe you have more feedback than I do, but it certainly didn't have the splash that I was hoping for, which is weird because Benji, just to fill you in, I mean, this is like...
This is hot at the moment.
I spend a lot of time in front of the QuickMail community on the podcast, right? So I'm not a stranger to this group. And even that seemed like a little bit too pushy.
And to some extent, we have a relationship and I'll let you actually post that. But if it was from someone totally unknown just joining the group, no chance.
Yeah. I think another key reason it was successful is because we weren't going in there to say, hey, you need help with content marketing. We're this agency and we can help you. Every single article was educational on a very specific topic of content marketing. And so in the article, we would make the case that, let's say, for example, the reason that you're not choosing the right topics is because you're not doing customer research. And then it would walk through the process of, it would share an example of a company that failed because they didn't do this customer research. And then we would walk through the process of how we solved it. And so anyone who's experienced this exact issue before is going to find immense value from reading this article. And so I think the reason it worked really well is because it was never a pitch for the service. It was always, if you have this problem, here's a way that you can solve it. And we're going to share everything that we've done. So we build trust that way. And then anyone who resonates with that pain point, they end up coming back to us down the road when they need a service like this. And so I think that's also just the difference in the approach is we're never really trying to pitch something. I always think of it in the mindset of we're trying to help someone accomplish something that they have a problem with. And that's through every blog post. Anything that we write is always, that's the mindset is how is this going to help the person on the other end? And when you don't put yourself first and think, how am I going to sell more agency clients via this blog post? It's a subtle mindset shift that I think makes a huge difference in the success of reaching out to someone or posting in a community.
So no call to action. I have to, I don't know, forgive me for being detailed, but surely you have an opt-in. Maybe at the end of the post, it says something like, check us out, or did this catch your interest? You know what I mean? Like, let's say 99% education, 1% pitch.
In the beginnings, the main goal was to build our email list. However, now it's somewhat different. The main goal is to get people to the agency page. So 2 things that we did to build the email list, every single blog post had an upgrade. So we wrote about some topics. So for example, one of our earlier posts was about me kind of going viral on Medium and explaining how I did that. And then the key lesson in the article was that in order to get exposure to a broader audience, you submit it to a publication that already has 200,000 followers because they'll email it out to their list. And that's how you can get a ton of traction. And so the upgrade that I created was a list of all the top Medium publications by follower account and topics, so that if you wanted to do the same thing, you could use this list to reach out to the editor and see if they would accept something like that. And so again, that was a key thing, is just seeing how you could add value as a way to collect an email subscriber. And then the other thing that we do now for almost every client is just contextual CTAs. So for example, if we're writing on a topic like wine corks for a company that sells wine or something like that, then what we would do there is then in the body of the post, let's say if it was on wine corks and we sold wine corks, we'd say, I don't know, if the article is about some unique thing this wine cork did.
Right. Organic wine corks.
Yeah. Organic wine corks. Then what we would do from there is basically say, oh, if you learned something about wine corks, by the way, we sell this organic wine cork, you can find it here. So the sales was always related to the education and the value that we provided in the post. And that's what works. So if you're reading about this topic, we're building trust, you're learning something, and then we have something that would add value to that on top of that. It all kind of matches.
I'm curious, how did you go about the sort of like outreach? You're trying to promote your sort of article to those big publications. How do you actually...
On Medium.
Yeah, on Medium. How did you actually go about doing that? Like it doesn't come like too salesy or like too pushy. I mean, it's very close to sort of like backlink strategy in that sense. It's like,
It is.
Can you actually give me a huge amount of value for, a bit of effort for you? It's just like, where is the, for me stuff,
On our site, we don't really do too much link building outreach, but I will tell you two different things that we did on the outreach side. So one was this exact example that you said. So I had to reach out to the head editor of the publication, I think, The Mission. And so what I did is I researched what some of the top articles were on The Mission so far. And when I was writing it, I wrote something that would mimic the same style of something that had already done well. And then I followed him on Twitter and started interacting with him a number of times before I ever pitched him, so that my face became familiar. And then when I pitched him, I shared specific examples of things that I had seen on his site already do well, and then said, hey, I wrote something in a similar style. I think it would be really interesting to your audience, because it was about me leaving the job in San Francisco to start my own company. The mission was about startups and growth and that kind of stuff. So everything related to something that would be of value to him. And so I think the key thing that people miss here is that they don't spend time researching the person that they're going to reach out to and think through, how can I benefit the person on the other end before reaching out to them? So his goal, his incentive is to get something that's going to get a ton of page views because it helps him. He wants a piece of content that's going to relate to his audience and be well liked there. And so if I check those two boxes in what I'm writing and say, this is going to add value to him, and it's not, how can I get page views to my article, but how can I do something that's going to help him and therefore help myself? That's, again, the mindset shift that I think is important to think about.
How long did you actually spend researching, for that person? And what was the total sort of effort for getting that publication?
Yeah, it was probably like a few days. And it's not like spending 3 days doing it. And it's just, I don't know, following him on Twitter, just looking at some of the posts, reading some of the articles, and then however long it took me to write that. So it's definitely more effort than what most people would do, which is just kind of come up with a list of people, craft some sort of template, and then send it the same thing to all of them. That, unfortunately, is the way that most people approach it. And being someone who owns a website, I get probably 20 to 25% of my emails are just straight pitches that I can tell the person spent no time or effort to do this, and I immediately delete them or just like block their domain, because I see this so much and it just is not effective. Versus if I can just tell that someone spent a little bit of time reading my article, including something, a quote or a learning from it, sharing a story of how this helped them, even if the pitch is kind of bad, I'll more likely than not respond, because I can just tell that this person spent time versus the person who just used a template. And I think the templated stuff it rubs me the wrong way. And any influential person who has a massive audience, so let's say you're trying to reach out to Tim Ferriss or someone of that stature, they get pitched all day. And what's going to resonate with them is sharing a personal story or something that a piece of advice that they gave that you implemented, because oftentimes a lot of these people, they're sharing content and advice and all this stuff every single day. And there's a lot of negativity that comes back, but there's not a lot of positive success stories. And so the more you can research something that someone said and tie a personal learning or story back to that, it just resonates because they're not getting emails like that every day. And I think that's a key thing that I try to do in all of my outreach is just research one specific point and say how this one specific thing helped me in my career or in my life. And that usually just doing that one little thing goes a long way.
In 2020, I mean, maybe here we are 5 years down the road, and now that becomes the new norm. I hate that phrase. That becomes the benchmark, and
then it'll change again.
We'll need video or something. I don't know. But Benji, I have to say, there's one. It's not a hack, but it's one case where you don't actually need to write personalization in order to get someone like, I don't know, Tim Ferriss to reply to you, and that is if you have a referral from a mutual connection. So
for sure.
We reached out to John Carlton
like that.
And I didn't write anything about, I may have had a sentence about how I liked his writing, but it was just a quick blurb. I think it was 3 sentences, but it led off saying like, hey, we had James Schramko on the show. You guys shared a stage at the last, copywriting speaking circuit. Would love to have you on the show, something like that. And he wrote back saying, yeah, or his assistant wrote back saying, yeah, anyone who has James on, I'm sure John will be up for it. And barrier crossed, right? And I think, Benji, I have to say, I use that mutual client to get to you today. And
for sure.
You're somebody who says no to a lot of, strangers, if you will. So let's say if you don't have a mutual connection, no ifs, ands, or buts, you need a personal snippet in there that says this ain't a template that I sent out to 50 other people.
Yeah, agreed.
Mind you, actually, you did manage to get some people who really thought the email was crafted just for them. And then
I'm not going to talk about that.
No, of course. We're not going to say who. But then, you told me at the end, like, dude, there was no personalization on this thing.
Yeah, the mutual connection thing does work really well, though. I've definitely used that before. Just, again, I think the difference is just in the mind of the person who's receiving it. They just want to know that you know them to some extent, whether it's the advice that they gave or someone in common. It's just like you wouldn't go up to some random person on the street and just say, hey, here's my product. Do you want it? And you're like, what? Like, why are you coming up to me? Like, yeah. I feel like that's a part of the problem is people try to do things online that they would never do in person. And you're just like, it doesn't make sense in any human interaction to do these things. Like you're shouting at someone saying like, hey, I have this art, like the link building thing. It's always like, you wrote this article on X and then I wrote this article on Y and you should link to it. And it's like, I don't even know who you are. Like,
but you should link to it, Benji,
I know. Why are you sending this?
But hold on. But well, let me think. So if I followed you on Twitter, Benji, and I reached out with a personalized something about your work and how it's impacted me, and then I asked you to put a link on the site, is there any chance that still works today? I just want to iron out for our listeners who are like really going after the link building thing. Do you have any advice for them? Is that the recipe, so to speak? It's like personalization and then the ask.
No, because it's played out already. I mean, Brian Dean is the one who kind of evangelized the skyscraper technique.
Was that, can you actually tell us for the audience who don't know, and including me?
Yeah, sure. It's basically the concept of, in order to build links, you build a resource that is the best resource on the topic. And then
like me and cold email, for example.
Yeah, you're truly trying to create the best resource. And then you basically look for sites that had a similar resource and say, I truly created the best resource on this topic. You should link to it. And you're going after broken links or just stuff that wasn't as good that people linked to. And then people would naturally link to it. So talking about shortcuts, the reason why that stopped working as well is because people took pieces of his process. So for example, they didn't create the best resource on the topic. They tried to half-ass something and then do the same ask and the same process. And this happened across like probably thousands of marketers all at once. And so everyone's now getting the template email that he used. And like the core pieces of the process of like really trying to create the best resource on the topic, finding the right sites and like all that stuff was kind of missed, and it just kind of ruined the tactic overall.
Is that still working, or is there a way to make that working?
I think he's saying that doesn't work anymore flat out.
I mean, some sites still have success with it. It's just the norm.
Let me rephrase that. Is there a strategy or a way to make it work that, let's say, I create, I don't know, the best resource on touring, for example. And then I realize that you have something that speak about a certain material that works right, it doesn't rust or whatever. And then I'm saying to you like, Benji, I wrote the best article on touring. I actually took some of the idea of your article and linked it, on my site. Would you actually mind doing the same reciprocity type of thing? So I'm like adding value up front. I'm doing my research and I created the best article already. Would that actually work for you? Would you actually link to my touring ultimate guide, including your own, sort of like piece of advice in it?
Yes and no. So I think where you're going with this is I would say yes. So the way that I would approach this is build something unique for the person that you really want to impress, and make sure that they know that you did this just for them. And then I think that will work. Instead of trying to take this mass approach, that's the way that I would think about it. I'll give you 2 examples. This is not on the link building side, but I'll tell you, these are people that now work with us on our team of outreach that worked to catch my attention. One actually happened in the last 2 weeks, and we're probably going to hire this person, but basically they looked at our website, they saw our different client roster, they read our blog posts, and then they created a blog post using the strategy that we recommend on our website, and then basically pitched us and said, hey, by the way, I wrote this article for one of your clients using your process. I really want to become a writer on the team. Will you just give it a look? And you're just like, what? Like, who spent the time doing this? How did they know what clients we...
Loves those outreach.
There's just all these questions that go through your mind. And so immediately we hopped on the phone with him. He already is starting to write with us now. Another one that worked really well, same kind of thing. This happened last year. He now runs 3 different accounts for us, trying to get a job. So we have job posting on our website. We've had over 800 applicants for it. Every single person that has ended up working with us reached out on the side of just the job application and did something unique. So the other person that did something really interesting was he wrote a cover letter. And why was the cover letter interesting? It wasn't just a generic cover letter. What he did is the whole first half was why you shouldn't hire me. And it was him saying, on paper, I don't have the right experience. Like, I have this really eclectic background of different things. So if you were to look at my pure experience, it doesn't work. I don't have any writing samples that I can point to that are what you're looking for. However, I'm super motivated. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. And it was like a page and a half of him explaining this and giving examples of different accomplishments that he had. And again, after reading something like that, you're just like, I have to give this guy a shot.
You fall for that, Benji?
I fell for it. And to be honest, the commonality in all of the successful people that we have on our team is they've done something like that. They've gone above and beyond. They show that it's almost just like a function of, do you care? Versus, are you one of those people that just, it's kind of like the spray and pray. It's like, I'm just going to use some template and spray as many people.
You apply to 200 applications, it's just a number game, dude. You're going to get one. Don't know which one, but you're going to get it.
You'll get the crappy one. Yeah, you'll get 10 crappy ones that you're going to wish you never had.
Yes, it's more effort. So if you took that same approach and said, there's 10 companies that I really, really want versus the 200, and you did something unique like this for each of them, yes, it's a ton of work, but the results that you're going to get from that are probably so much better.
It's not that difficult, honestly. Like, you just pick up, like you said, 10 companies you want to work with, and you do something that adds value for those companies before you reach out to them. It's like if you're reaching out for, copywriter for a certain company, then you just say like, hey, I went ahead and created your 5 or your 3 even next blog articles that, I would want to write more for you. This is the thing. Do you think, actually improve, is there anything? Just basically go ahead and then produce some value beforehand. Instead, it's just always like me kind of thing. Like, would you give me a job? That's just like...
Yeah, I have to bump in and say we're forgetting about the the percentage of people who have been trying this and hustling and getting no results, and they're like, damn it, I'm wasting weeks on this thing. I haven't secured a position. I'm
For sure.
basically creating stuff for free. And to that person, I don't know. I mean, you have to either be a great copywriter in a cover letter or just flat out already come with the skills needed to be someone who Benji would hire. And that's pretty hard to do. I mean, we're maybe talking about, like, Benji, let me ask, like, have you gotten someone who went the extra mile, but you looked at their work and it was like, yeah, I appreciate the effort, but it's not quite there?
Yeah, for sure. All that can do is open up the door. It doesn't guarantee that you get anything from it. And to that point, play to your strengths. So if you're not a writer,
that's right.
Maybe doing that whole writing, the cover letter or the blog post isn't the best thing for you.
Apply to different jobs, honestly.
However, like, let's say you're a good presenter or you're good in front of video.
Yeah.
You could do the same thing, but instead of writing a blog post,
that's right,
send over a video presentation of you explaining why you're the good fit. So I think it's just, you need to do something to open the door. But again, it's not always going to guarantee the success of whatever you do. It just might open an opportunity, and then play to your strengths. I think that's key.
Can I add something else as well on that, Jack?
Sure.
I would say to those people, try again in 6 months, same companies, and say, okay, here's what I learned since then. I really, improve on X and Y. I researched on XYZ. I see you built, those 6 other articles, whatever, and then keep on reaching out. Positive persistence always work.
Agreed.
So I have one final, paperclip for this conversation here. So I'm not going to invest, call it 10 hours into anything until I know that I have this person's email address and I know that I'm on their radar to begin with. Like, even when I was just starting out, I don't think I would have spent 10 hours on an article and then sent it hoping that that email wouldn't bounce, right? So what I would do first is just like send a thank you email. Hey, Benji, like, stoked on your blog.
Great idea.
Keep it up. Like, this is awesome stuff. Naturally, not naturally, but probably 40% of the people would reply to something like that.
Yeah, that's a cool thing.
And that's the list that I would invest in, right? And that way, hopefully it helps save a little bit of time and focus on a more targeted list.
100%. That's something that I actually do in the research process. So if I'm going after someone to get in contact with, I'll actually do a good amount of research to figure out what's the most effective channel to get in front of them.
Oh, okay.
So is it email? Are they super active on Twitter? Are they super active on LinkedIn? So I actually scope out their social media to see if they're really active on Twitter. I might just shoot them a Twitter message versus sending an email. Or if they don't have social media, then I might opt to do the email instead. So to your point, I think that's also important, is just figuring out what's going to get the attention of someone. But I agree that doing something that's not an ask or anything, it's just like a thank you, just getting them to notice you is also key, that when you reach out with an ask, they recognize your name and your face.
That's right. There's a lot of benefits to that. But I'm just curious, Benji, can you tell us what outreach efforts make sense today? So let's say backlinks, not so much. Maybe, but not really.
Lots of work.
Yeah, but maybe what content marketing outreach efforts are worth the squeeze right now?
Yeah, I think still the community content promotion is good. If you have more time than money to spend, then I think it's worth investing the time in that. I think the challenge is just finding the active groups now. I think groups on some of these platforms were a lot more active a few years ago. So maybe you spend your time on Reddit, where the whole community is active, or something like that, to try to crack the code on that side. Another thing, I'm in the process of doing this right now, is just PR outreach. Very similar to link building. But the idea is you come up with a concept that you think makes sense in the current news cycle. You research the journalists who have written something similar about this exact topic before, and then you craft a personal pitch with some unique piece of content. So here's an example of something that we've done in the past, or something that I did in the past in that first job that I had. So I was running marketing for a software development company in San Francisco. When we launched our blog, it kind of coincided with the announcement of the Apple Watch getting released for the first time. We thought about what unique content we could create around the Apple Watch. And what we realized is there was nothing that shared what apps would look like on the Apple Watch. Up until that point, we had like design and development resources in-house. And so what we did is we created mock-ups of what the most popular apps might look like on the App Store.
Love it.
And on the Apple Watch. And we just did these different renderings of the interface. And for all these different top apps like Spotify, Yelp, and all that kind of stuff. And then we pitched that to journalists who had covered the Apple Watch in the past. And I think it was 9 to 5 Mac picked it up, and it got syndicated across 200 publications. And it drove a ton of traffic to our website and kind of like launched the whole company.
I'm just curious, what, let's say, I don't know, Benji, like pick on my agency for a second. Like, let's say the Apple Watch is coming out. I have this cool idea. I have design resources.
How do you convert?
How would I be able to turn that? Yeah. So it's like, hey, here's a cool thing. Like, do you need to be an Apple Watch accessory maker in order to do something? Like, how do you tie those two together?
We didn't even build Apple Watch apps. So that wasn't even something that we did.
So how do you turn that into traffic? It's like, it's like, hey, here's a cool article sent by Benji.
No, because it was the agency. And so we said, the app designers and developers are the ones who did this. Okay. And so if you're in 9 to 5 Mac and it said, hey, this app development agency is the one who designed all of these.
That makes sense. Okay.
And then you get a ton of inbound interest because they're like, oh, wow, these are really cool. I've never seen anything like this before. They click to your website and they're like, oh, this is an app development and design agency. I want to potentially use them.
It's almost like publicizing your portfolio.
Yeah, exactly.
In that case, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, so I guess you have to wait around for a $1 million idea to hit you, but
that's just one example. But no, there's tons of different things that you can do. So let's say you're an email app. You're an app to send emails.
Yeah.
Well, you have all this data about what types of emails people are sending.
Yeah.
What the average open rates are.
Sure.
What the average click-through rates are. Why not just compile that data because it's unique to your own company, and then pitch that to marketing publications or journalists who cover marketing to talk about different average email open rate benchmarks or stuff like that. So you don't have to have design development resources. You don't have to like really have anything. You just have to think of what is unique that my company has that no one else has access to. How can I compile that into a great resource that would be valuable to this community? And then just find people who are willing to write about it. That's pretty much the process. We've done this with another company that hired freelance developers all over the world. And the concept that we came up with was, what do different developers charge in different countries and different continents? And then what does it cost for different types of app developers, like the languages? And so no one had any of that data, but this company had it because their whole platform is that. And so we designed it really nicely and then just submitted it to a bunch of tech publications, and that got picked up as well.
Submitted it to tech publications. Is that like going back to the Medium approach, like custom snippet, wrote something in line, or?
It was more the finding journalists who've written about this kind of stuff before and pitching it to them, and also submitting, like a lot of these news sites have submit a tip. And so you can also just do that as well. Yeah. Like almost every site, if you scroll to the very bottom on a news site, there's like a tips and you can submit tips in there, and like doesn't always work, but that's like the low hanging fruit way to see if it just gets picked up.
That's great, man. Jeremy, unless you have anything to add to this, I'm going to ask Benji what he thinks about influencer interviews.
Yeah.
No, sounds good. Let's do that. And then maybe we want to also asking for some influential books as well.
Oh, sure.
Great.
I've used influencer marketing almost throughout my entire career. At that same app development company, the challenge that I was faced with was I wasn't an app developer and I really knew nothing about the space. And so the way that I got content written was reaching out to people who were known in the industry, who already had an audience, and asked to interview them about a topic. So two things that does. One, you're now getting the subject matter expertise from someone who's well known in the industry, so that has clout. And then two, once you publish the article, they're more willing to share it with their audience. And if their audience is the same as yours, it can drive a ton of traffic back to your website. This is as opposed to the way that most people did it, which is they try to do these roundup posts. I'm sure you've seen that a ton where they
What's that?
Oh yeah, I've been on 2 of them, and
they ask
same
like
thing, yeah.
10 different people one question.
Oh yeah,
And then they put one little
one
quote in there,
quote.
and then
Yeah,
they're like,
that's lame.
please share my article. It's
Your
just
number
it's,
27.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. You have the number 27 tip in here. Please share it with your audience of 100,000 people. You're like, no, I'm not going to do that. But
That's
the
right.
difference is if you interview one person and you make the whole article about them and their advice, it holds a different weight to them. So they're much more willing to share an article like that out than they would be to share an article with 10 other people in the industry where they're just one small piece of advice. So that is something that I've used a lot in terms of getting in touch with those people. Same kind of things that I've talked about. I would do a lot of research on them, look at their social media accounts, see if they've written about anything that relates to what we want to do the blog post topic about, and say, hey, I know you previously mentioned this. Would you be willing to talk and go deeper on this subject? And almost always they'd say yes. And this is not because now I have like clout in the marketing space now and content marketing. This was before like I even had any Twitter followers or anything like that. It's just, I think the key is just showing the person that you put in the time. That's it.
Benji, you seem like extremely receptive to reciprocity as an influencer factor. Is that, would you say actually your favorite influence weapon?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's empathy, really. At the end of the day, as a marketer, you have to understand the landscape. You have to understand the people you're reaching out to, and you have to, I do think, put someone else before yourself and always think through, what does this person want from this, or what is their goal, and how can I align my goal to what they want?
Right.
And I don't think enough people think through that. It's always what's going to benefit me. And that's what people lead with in their pitches is like, hey, you should do this because I want this. And you're like, huh? And it's like, no, even if you just switch the language in the beginning and say, hey, I know these are your outcomes and I have something that can help you do that, immediately it just comes across differently.
I think you said it well, Benji, where you said people do things online that they would never do in person. You know, they just go straight to things that would be absolutely rude if it was face to face. So maybe that's a good mindset for, you know, how would you approach this person if you were in the same room?
Jack, what's your favorite weapon of influence already?
Scarcity. Buy now. I like, reciprocity is amazing. I'm also a big fan of liking. I've used that one many times with success, and it's been used on me many times with success. It's like, you know, we share a common background, a common interest, a common whatever. I'm a sucker for that. So I don't know, shouldn't be putting that out.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for reciprocity as well. I'm like Benji on this one.
Okay, cool. Does oversharing ever have a negative consequence? Sharing without a filter. Have you ever had it backfire or like used against you or anything remotely not positive?
No, not that I can think of. I think the key thing there is just a lot of people think through tactics before they think about why they're doing something. I shared this example the other day. So it kind of relates to doing this. So like most people would think, I want to do a podcast because I think podcasts are really interesting and it seems like a lot of people are finding success with them. And that's what they lead with. It's that mindset. It's like, oh, this tactic is working. Okay. But the right way to approach it is to say, you know what? Everyone in the sales category isn't doing this in podcasts. And I think that I have a unique way to approach it that no one else is doing. And that's the reason that I want to do a podcast. It's not the channel first. And I think that's a really important thing. So it's the same thing with content. It's not, I need to start a blog because everyone else is blogging and I know it can help me. It's what is no one in my category writing about? Or what are they doing differently? Or what can I do differently than everyone else? And I'll give you the example of even our own site and the motivations behind it. Again, when I was back in running marketing for these companies, I tried to read as many blogs as I could about content marketing to learn how to do it from the ground up. And there wasn't a resource out there that helped me do this. A lot of it was just really high level fluff, like not really sharing the detail and the strategy and the in-depth stuff. And so when we came to starting our own site, that was the differentiator that we wanted to bring to this was, I want to share everything because I wish that I had that as a resource when I got started. And because we had known the landscape and known all the other content marketing blogs weren't doing that, that's what really resonated. And so I think that's an important lesson, is just, it's not about the tactic. It's really about the strategy and the why behind you're doing things, and look for opportunities that no one else is doing. And also think through what you're uniquely positioned to execute on and what unique skill set you can bring to the table. And I think that is what lends itself to success more than the tactic.
Well said.
Well said. Jinx. Okay. Benji,
Books.
take us out with a couple of libros. Yeah. What books are you reading, or would you recommend?
Oh man, I literally have a book list that I can send you that you can include in this.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
why not? We could add it to the show notes.
Yeah, it has
There you go.
over 100 books, but I'll
Yeah,
tell
maybe
you.
too much.
Well, it's actually
Shit.
pretty well organized. It actually gives the reason for recommending all of them and what I took away from every single one. But I'll give you
Like Derek.
a few books that were really influential on my career. So I think first one, Think and Grow Rich. That book for me was just kind of just teaches you about positive mindset. And if you think something strong enough, you can make it happen. So I think that's just in order to get in a good business mindset. Lean Startup was transformational to my career, just teaching you the wrong way to build companies and products. And it even applies to marketing too, because a lot of people spend all this time and resources on trying to get something off the ground only to launch it and realize no one wants it.
Yeah.
And I saw that happening over and over again in Silicon Valley. You think, I'm going to go to San Francisco and all these companies are doing it right and they're super smart. And then you get into them and you realize that many of them fall into the same trap that we all do. So that was another one.
Right.
Contagious. This is probably one you haven't heard about unless you're super into psychology, but it's by Jonah Berger, and it's just research on why things catch on. So it's a really, really, really interesting book. I think that was a great one for me.
Is it better than Made to Stick by the Heath brothers?
Yes, much better. I'm not a fan of that book, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, interesting.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's one of my top 5.
Read this one,
Okay,
and
fair
then
Well, there you go. You got a top 4 now.
yeah. Trust Me, I'm Lying is fascinating. I don't know if you read that.
I didn't like it. I thought it
No?
was kind of lame, honestly. But
It was.
I don't know.
I actually tweeted about this last night because I feel like he was so early in understanding the trend of how to manipulate the media.
Okay.
And I feel like this is more common than not now.
I give you that I read it way later, and then it was like, I kind of know that stuff, kind of thing. So it became more boring than enlightening.
I read it in 2012 before anyone was talking about how to place fake stories into the media.
Got it.
And I thought to myself, is this really possible? Like, this guy'd really do all this stuff? It was mind blowing to me. But you could take the takeaways from the book in 2 different directions. You could say marketing sucks and the people who do this kind of stuff are evil. But you can also, there was so much strategy in what he did in there that I learned, like even how to reach out to people and what people thought of as credible. And so one of the things that he talks about, this concept called newsjacking in it. And it's basically you place a story in some small publication, and then you reference that story in a bigger publication. You can slowly reach up the chain to get it in some massive publication. So even that concept alone is just really interesting. You think about people are lazy, they don't spend the time to research. And if you just present some other credible source, then more often than not, they'll believe you. And so even it goes back to what you said on just referencing someone.
Yeah.
It's the same effect there.
Credible source, by the way, should be in air quotes because
Yes, credible source.
Okay.
Predictably
Right.
Irrational is another really, really good book. It's understanding
There you go.
psychology and consumer behavior. I think that's probably the only ones I'll go into. Those were, I think, the foundation to just the psychology is what I'm really fascinated about within marketing. And so, yeah.
Thanks, Benji. And I understand you have a course teaching some of your strategies for content marketing. Maybe you can take us out by giving us a quick blurb and tell people where they can go to check out more.
Sure. So we've had a course for 3 years. We just recently rebuilt it a month ago. The reason being, we've learned so much over the last 3 years working with 20 to 30 different companies running their content marketing from B2B, B2C, e-commerce. And we wanted to share all our learnings with others. And so we built it in a case study format so that people can see how the strategy is applied to real companies. and we walk people through our entire process. So how to do customer research, how to develop a content strategy for a B2B, B2C, e-commerce business, how to do all the writing. So we have different writing frameworks that we suggest people use, and then we break down the difference between a good and bad article in those and explain why. And then we walk through promotion. So we share this PR promotion, influencer marketing, content promotion, the community content promotion, and then also share how to drive conversions in it. And it's meant to be very collaborative. So people can ask questions that are specific to their business, and we'll go in there and answer them, as well as we do live Q&As with people in the community. So pretty excited about that. It's been really fun just connecting with our audience on there, and I look forward to having more people join.
Yeah, so we'll put the link in the show notes, but it's growandconvert.com/top content marketer with hyphens in the gaps. Is that right?
Correct.
Cool. Well, Benji, thank you so much for stopping by. And I have to say, I anticipated we'd be talking just about content marketing and promotion and using outreach to fire that up, but we ended up talking a little bit more about business strategy in general, which was refreshing. So thanks, man. And I think a lot of our listeners picked up a bunch from this. A lot of gems.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. That was a really good conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Heck yeah.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high vibe by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher, or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
So they can send awesome emails.
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.